After 18 years of marriage, I never imagined finding hotel receipts in my wife Clara's gym bag would be the least of my problems. What I discovered next made me realize that sometimes the people closest to you can orchestrate the most devastating betrayals. And my 3 daughters were about to learn the same lesson. My name is Julian Morrow. I'm 47 years old. And until 6 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I'm a partner at Westfield & Associates, one of the top architectural firms in Denver. 23 years I've been there. Worked my way up from junior draftsman to having my name on projects that define this city skyline. I bought a house in Highlands Ranch that I designed myself. 3 beautiful daughters and what I believed was a solid marriage to my wife, Clara. Elise is 17 now, getting ready for college applications. She's got her mother's stubborn streak, but my eye for detail. Anya's 14, all attitude and artistic talent. That reminds me why I fell in love with design in the first place. And little Sophie, 11 years old, still thinks her dad can fix anything that breaks. Used to think that. Anyway, the cracks started showing last spring, though I didn't recognize them then. Clara began working late more often. Claimed the marketing firm where she worked was landing bigger clients. She'd come home flustered, distracted, always checking her phone. When I'd ask about her day, she'd give me these vague answers about deadlines and difficult clients. I chalked it up to work stress. Hell, I knew all about that. Then came the weekend trips, team-building retreats, she called them. Overnight stays at mountain resorts where the company supposedly held strategic planning sessions. She'd pack nice clothes, the kind she used to save for our date nights, and come back Sunday evening tired but glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. The first red flag I couldn't ignore came on a Tuesday evening in March. I was working late at the office reviewing blueprints for a new downtown project when Henri Dubois stopped by my office. Henry's my senior partner, 15 years older than me, divorced twice, and the kind of man who thinks his age and position give him permission to comment on everyone's personal life. Julian, Henri said, settling into the chair across from my desk without invitation. Saw Clara at the Marriott downtown yesterday afternoon. She looked great. I glanced up from my drawings. Henri continued. Funny thing though, she was with some guy I didn't recognize. Figure it might be a client meeting, but they seemed pretty friendly. The pencil in my hand stopped moving. Friendly how? Henri shrugged, but there was something calculating in his eyes. You know, laughing, leaning in close. The kind of body language that says they know each other well. I set down the pencil carefully. What time was this? Around 2 o'clock. They were heading toward the elevators. That night, I asked Clara about her day. She mentioned having lunch with a potential client. Said it went well. Might lead to a big contract. She didn't mention the Marriott. She didn't mention any man. And when I asked where they met, she said some cafe downtown. Couldn't remember the name. That conversation with Henri haunted me for days. I found myself watching Clara differently, noticing things I'd previously dismissed. The way she guarded her phone, taking it to the bathroom, sleeping with it under her pillow, how she'd started buying new clothes, subtle changes that made her look younger, more vibrant, the expensive perfume that appeared on her dresser, one I'd never seen before. 2 weeks later, I decided to come home early. Elise had a track meet, and I wanted to surprise the family by actually showing up for once. I pulled into our driveway at 4:30, expecting to find Clara getting ready to leave for the school. Instead, I found her car gone and Anya sitting at the kitchen island doing homework. Where's your mom? I asked Anya, trying to keep my voice casual. She left about an hour ago. Anya replied without looking. Up from her math book. Said she had to meet someone about work stuff. Did she say when she'd be back? No, just that we should order pizza for dinner because she'd be late. I called Clara's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I tried her office. Her assistant told me Clara had left early around 2 o'clock, saying she had a family emergency. Family emergency. But here I was, and the girls were fine. That evening, Clara came home at 9:15 looking flustered and slightly disheveled. Her hair was different, like she'd run her hands through it repeatedly, and her blouse was wrinkled in ways that suggested she'd been sitting for a long time. How was Elise's track meet? She asked, hanging her purse on the kitchen counter. You missed it, I said, watching her reaction carefully. Clara's face fell, but the surprise looked forced. Oh no. Was that today? I completely forgot. Work has been so crazy. Your assistant said you left early because of a family emergency. The pause was barely perceptible, but I caught it. Did she? I told her I had an appointment. Maybe she misunderstood. What kind of appointment runs until 9 at night? Clara opened the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of wine. Her back to me. A client dinner, the Hartman account I've been working on. They wanted to discuss expanding their campaign. At which restaurant? Another pause. That new place downtown. Elevation. I knew Elevation. High-end steakhouse that required reservations weeks in advance. Not the kind of place where business dinners run past 9 on a weeknight. The next morning, I called Elevation. They had no record of any reservation under Clara's name or her company's name for the previous evening. That weekend, I decided to confront her directly. We were in our bedroom getting ready for bed. The girls all asleep down the hall. Clara was brushing her hair at her vanity, humming softly to herself. She looked content, almost glowing. Clara, I said, sitting on the edge of her bed. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. She stopped brushing and met my eyes in the mirror. What's wrong? Are you having an affair? The brush clattered to the vanity surface. Clara turned around slowly, her expression shifting from surprise to indignation. How dare you ask me that? She said, her voice rising slightly. Because things don't add up anymore. The late nights, the mysterious appointments, the lies about where you've been. Lies. Clara stood up, crossing her arms over her chest. I haven't lied about anything. You're being paranoid. Then explain the client dinner at Elevation. That never happened. Her face flushed red. You called the restaurant? You're checking up on me now. Answer the question. Clara, you're being ridiculous, Julian. Are you jealous? Is that what this is about? You can't handle that I have a life outside of this house. I looked at her standing there, defiant and defensive, and something cold settled in my chest. No, I said quietly. I'm not jealous. I'm just done with the lies. After that confrontation, Clara became more careful, but also more distant. She'd smile at me across the breakfast table while the girls chattered about school, but her eyes were elsewhere. I recognized the look now. The expression of someone whose mind was with another person entirely. I wasn't going to sit there and pretend everything was normal anymore. 23 years in architecture had taught me that when you suspect structural damage, you investigate before the whole building comes down. I started with phone records. Our family plan made it easy enough to access. What I found made my stomach drop. Hundreds of texts to a number I didn't recognize. Calls that lasted hours. Always during times where she claimed to be in meetings or running errands. The number belonged to someone named Victor Gerard. A quick online search revealed he worked in commercial real estate, divorced, 42 years old. His LinkedIn profile showed he'd recently moved to Denver from California. I cross-referenced the timing of their communications with Clara's mysterious absences. Every client dinner matched up with long phone conversations. Every weekend retreat aligned with gaps in their text exchanges suggesting they were together. But the smoking gun came when I found Clara's iPad hidden in her closet, tucked behind shoe boxes she never touched. She'd forgotten to log out of her personal email account. The messages were devastating. Not just the affair itself, but the casual cruelty of how she discussed our marriage. Julian's so boring these days, she'd written. All work and no passion. I feel invisible in my own house. Victor had responded, you deserve someone who sees you, someone who makes you feel alive. There were photos, nothing explicit, but intimate enough to make me feel sick. Clara laughing in restaurant booths I'd never seen. Walking hand in hand through downtown streets, looking happier than she'd looked with me in years. The worst part was reading her plans to spend spring break with him while telling me she was visiting her sister in Portland. My daughter's asking me why mommy seemed so excited about Aunt Sarah suddenly when she'd never shown much interest before. I printed everything. Every email, every photo, every receipt for hotels and restaurants charged to credit cards I didn't know existed. By the time I finished, I had a folder 2 inches thick. That night, I waited in the kitchen until Clara came home from another board meeting. A lie so obvious now that I wondered how I'd ever believed it. We need to talk, I said when she walked in. She sighed dramatically. Julian, if this is about the other night. I slid the folder across the kitchen island. Open it. Clara's face went white as she flipped through the pages for several long moments. The only sound was paper rustling and the hum of our refrigerator. Finally, she looked up. You went through my private emails. That's your response? That I invaded your privacy? This is sick, Julian. Stalking me, printing out my personal correspondence. Personal correspondence? I stood up, my voice rising despite my attempt to stay calm. You mean evidence of your affair? It's not what it looks like. Then explain what it looks like when my wife of 18 years is planning vacations with another man while lying to our daughters about where she's going. Clara's defiance wavered for just a moment, but then her chin lifted again. You don't understand. You've been emotionally absent for years. Victor makes me feel like a woman again, not just your wife or the girl's mother. The admission hit like a physical blow, but it also brought clarity. Pack a bag, I said quietly. You're leaving tonight. Clara didn't pack a bag that night. Instead, she locked herself in our bedroom and called her sister, sobbing loud enough for the whole house to hear. Elise knocked on my study door around midnight. Dad, what's going on with Mom? I looked at my 17-year-old daughter, this young woman who was supposed to be worried about college applications and prom dates, and felt my heart break all over again. Your mother and I are having some problems, I said carefully. Adult problems that have nothing to do with you girls. Are you getting divorced? The direct question caught me off guard. Elise had always been perceptive, but hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I don't know yet, sweetheart. Maybe. Elise sat down in the chair across from my desk, suddenly looking much older than 17. Is Mom seeing someone else? I stared at her. What makes you ask that? She's been different lately. Happier, but also secretive. And she's always on her phone now, even during dinner. Plus, she bought new underwear last month, like really expensive stuff. She left the receipt on her dresser. The matter-of-fact way Elise laid out the evidence reminded me painfully of myself. My daughter had been building a case, too, probably without even realizing it. Elise, it's okay, Dad. I mean, it's not okay, but I'm not stupid. I know what's happening. Over the next week, the truth spread through our house like a slow poison. Anya figured out when she overheard Clara on the phone, saying things no wife should say to anyone but her husband. Little Sophie just knew something was wrong because Mommy and Daddy weren't talking anymore. And when they did, their voices were sharp and angry. Clara tried to minimize the damage, telling the girls this was just a rough patch that couples sometimes go through. She painted herself as the victim of my controlling behavior and unfair accusations. But Elise wasn't buying it. Mom, I heard her say one afternoon when she thought I wasn't listening. Dad found your emails, didn't he? That's why he's so upset. Those emails were private, Clara replied. Your father had no right to read them. But you did write them. You were seeing someone else. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. That evening, Elise came to find me in the garage where I'd been spending most of my time since the confrontation. I was reorganizing my tools. Anything to keep my hands busy and my mind focused. Dad, I want you to know something, she said, leaning against my workbench. Whatever happens with you and Mom, me and the girls, we're on your side. You're the one who's been here for us. You're the one who comes to our games and helps with homework and makes sure we have everything we need. Elise, you don't need to choose sides. Yeah, I do. Because Mom's trying to make this your fault, and that's garbage. She's the one who cheated. She's the one who lied. And now she's trying to manipulate us into feeling sorry for her. My daughter's fierce loyalty both warmed and worried me. These girls shouldn't have to navigate adult betrayals. Shouldn't have to choose between their parents. But Clara had made those choices for them when she decided our family wasn't enough. I spent the weekend at my brother's house, taking time to clear my head and plan my next moves. When I returned Monday evening, Clara was waiting in the living room with all three girls, looking like she was staging an intervention. Girls, she said, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. Your father has some very serious accusations about me that simply aren't true. Elise crossed her arms, her expression skeptical. What kind of accusations, Mom? He thinks I'm having an affair, which is absolutely ridiculous. I've been working extra hours to help our family financially, and instead of being grateful, he's become suspicious and controlling. Anya looked between us, confused and uncomfortable. Sophie sat curled up next to Clara, tears already forming in her eyes. "Daddy," Sophie whispered, "are you and Mommy getting divorced?" I knelt down in front of my youngest daughter, my heart breaking at the fear in her voice. "Sweetheart, sometimes adults have problems they can't fix together. But no matter what happens between Mommy and me, we both love you and your sisters more than anything. But I don't want you to get divorced." Sophie burst into tears. Clara pulled Sophie closer, shooting me a look that clearly said, "See what you've done?" But Elise was watching our mother carefully, and I could see the wheels turning in her 17-year-old mind. "Mom," Elise said quietly, "if Dad's wrong about everything, why don't you just show him your phone? Prove there's nothing to hide." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Clara's grip on Sophie tightened. "I shouldn't have to prove my innocence to anyone, especially my own family," she said finally. "Your father needs to learn to trust me again." That night, I made the call I've been dreading. My lawyer, Isabelle Leclerc, had handled real estate transactions for me in the past, but she also specialized in family law. "Julian," she said when I explained the situation, "I'm sorry you're going through this, but based on what you've told me and the evidence you've gathered, you have a strong case." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means Colorado is an equitable distribution state, but infidelity can affect alimony and potentially child custody. With documentation of her affair and the financial deception, you'll likely keep the house and have primary custody if you want it." "I want it. The girls need stability. And Clara's clearly not thinking about anyone but herself right now. I'll draw up the papers. We can have her served by Wednesday." Tuesday morning, I sat the girls down before school. Elise already knew what was coming. She'd found the legal documents on my desk and read through them with the thoroughness of someone who'd inherited my attention to detail. "I'm filing for divorce," I told them. "I know this isn't what any of us wanted, but your mother has been lying to us, and I can't continue living like this." Anya started crying. Sophie ran to her room and slammed the door, but Elise just nodded. "We have to choose who to live with," she asked. "I hope not. I hope we can work something out that's best for everyone." But even as I said it, I knew Clara wouldn't make this easy. She'd fight for the girls, not because she wanted them, but because losing them would mean losing control over me. The biggest shock came Thursday morning when I walked into the office and found Clara sitting in Henry's office, both of them looking grave and conspiratorial. Through the glass walls, I could see her gesturing animatedly while Henri nodded sympathetically. My assistant Sarah intercepted me before I could storm in there. "Julian," she said quietly, "Henri wants to see you in the conference room." Clara's been here for an hour. In the conference room, Henri sat at the head of the table like he was chairing a board meeting. Clara sat to his right, her eyes red-rimmed but defiant. "Julian," Henri began, "Clara came to me very concerned about your recent behavior. She says, you've been making wild accusations, threatening divorce, putting the girls through unnecessary trauma." I stared at him, then at her. "You came to my workplace to discuss our personal problems?" "I came to someone I thought might talk sense into you," Clara said. "Henry's been a friend to both of us for years." "Henri," I said, keeping my voice level, "did you tell Clara about seeing her at the Marriott with another man?" Henri shifted uncomfortably. "I mentioned I'd seen her, yes, but I may have misinterpreted what I observed." The pieces fell into a place with sickening clarity. Henri hadn't been trying to warn me that day. He'd been fishing for information, probably reporting back to Clara about what I suspected. "How long have you known?" I asked him directly. "Known what? About the affair? About Victor Gerard? About the hotel meetings you've been helping to cover up?" Clara's face went white. Henry's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something calculating underneath. "Julian," Henri said carefully, "I think you're under a lot of stress. Maybe you should take some time off, get some counseling." "No." I stood up, my voice cold and controlled. "What I'm going to do is remind you both that I've been documenting everything. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, emails, all of it." I looked directly at Henri. "And I'm also going to remind you that as a senior partner in this firm, You have a fiduciary duty to maintain professional boundaries. Involving yourself in an employee's marital affairs and potentially using your position to intimidate me could be construed as workplace harassment. Henry's face flushed red. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you that I've retained legal counsel and that any further interference in my personal life will be addressed through appropriate channels. I turned to Clara. And you're going to be served with divorce papers today? I suggest you find your own lawyer. As I walked out of the conference room, I could hear Henri calling my name, but I didn't look back. Whatever friendship or professional relationship we'd had was over. By afternoon, word had spread through the office about the confrontation. Some colleagues avoided me, probably worried about taking sides and what they saw as office drama. But others, especially the younger architects who'd never liked Henry's old boy network mentality, made a point of showing support. The papers were served that evening while I was helping Sophie with homework. The process server found Clara at Victor Gerard's apartment. 2 weeks after being served, Clara made her first real mistake. She tried to empty our joint savings account. I discovered it Monday morning when my phone buzzed with a low balance alert from our bank. $28,000 gone. Money we'd saved for Elise's college tuition, for Anya's orthodontics, for emergencies that actually mattered to our family. I called the bank immediately. The transfer had been made Saturday morning to an account in Victor Gerard's name. Not even subtle about it. Isabel, my lawyer, was furious when I called her. This is financial misconduct during divorce proceedings, she said. It's going to destroy any sympathy a judge might have had for her. Can we get the money back? We can try. I'm filing an emergency motion today for a restraining order on all marital assets. But Julian, this shows desperation. She's panicking. That afternoon, I did something that surprised even me. I drove to Victor Gerard's real estate office downtown. He was showing a client property listings when I walked in, all smiles and professional charm. Excuse me, I said to his client, a young couple looking at starter homes. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to inform you that Mr. Gerard is currently involved in stealing money from a family with 3 children to fund his affair with a married woman. You might want to consider working with a more ethical agent. The couple exchanged glances and quickly left. Victor's face turned red with anger. You can't come into my workplace. Actually, I can. It's a public business, and I can certainly share factual information about your character with potential clients. What do you want? I want my family's money returned to our account by 5 o'clock today. Otherwise, I'll be standing outside your office every morning at 9 o'clock letting everyone know exactly what kind of man they're considering doing business with. Victor stared at me for a long moment. You're insane. No, I'm a father protecting his children's future from a thief. There's a difference. The money was back in our account by 4:30. That evening, Clara called me, screaming about harassment and threatening to get a restraining order. Go ahead, I told her calmly. File whatever you want, but explain to the judge why you stole our children's college fund to give to your boyfriend. It wasn't stealing. It was theft from our daughters. And now every lawyer in this city is going to know exactly who Clara Moreau really is. The line went quiet for a long moment. Then she hung up. Elise found me in my study later that night, grading architectural plans and trying to keep my mind occupied. Dad, she said, sitting in the chair across from my desk. Sophie is having nightmares about money. She heard you and Mom fighting about bank accounts. My heart sank. What kind of nightmares? She thinks we're going to lose the house, have to move, that she won't be able to stay in her school. She's 11, Dad. She shouldn't have to worry about this stuff. I set down my pencil and really looked at Elise. She was carrying too much for a 17-year-old, trying to be strong for her younger sisters while watching her parents' marriage implode. Your mom tried to take money that belongs to all of us, I said carefully. But I stopped it. The house is safe. Your schools are safe. Whatever happens between your mother and me, you girls will be okay. Promise. Promise. Henry's retaliation came swift and petty. My workload suddenly doubled with impossible deadlines and projects that seemed designed to make me fail. Client meetings I'd been handling for years were reassigned to other architects without explanation. But Henri had underestimated how much respect I'd earned with our clients over 2 decades. Thursday morning, I got a call from Mark Lefevre, owner of Lefevre Development and our biggest client. His voice was concerned. Julian, I need to ask you something directly. Are you leaving Westfield and Associates? Not by choice, I said carefully. Why do you ask? Because Henri called yesterday, suggesting we might want to consider transitioning our projects to other team members. Said you're going through personal issues that might affect your work quality. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Henri wasn't just interfering in my personal life now. He was trying to destroy my professional reputation. Mark, my personal life has never interfered with my work. Every project I've handled for you has been delivered on time and under budget for 15 years. That's what I told Henri, which is why I'm calling you directly. Whatever's happening over there, Lefevre Development wants to continue working with you specifically. If that becomes a problem, we'll need to discuss alternatives. By afternoon, I'd received similar calls from 3 other major clients. Word was spreading through Denver's architecture community that Henri was trying to force me out, and nobody liked what they were hearing. Isabel had warned me this might happen. Workplace retaliation during divorce proceedings is illegal, she'd said. But proving it can be tricky. You need to document everything. I started carrying a small notebook, recording every interaction with Henri, every changed assignment, every deadline that seemed unreasonable. By the end of the week, I had 12 pages of documented harassment. Friday afternoon, Henri called me into his office. He was sitting behind his desk with a satisfied smirk, clearly expecting me to beg for mercy. Julian, I think it's time we discuss your future here at the firm, he said. Your recent behavior has been concerning. Perhaps it would be better for everyone if you considered other opportunities. I pulled out my notebook and set it on his desk, followed by a folder containing copies of client communications and project records. Henri, I think it's time we discuss your future here at the firm, because I've been documenting your retaliation and I have 4 major clients who've specifically requested that I remain on their projects. Clients who represent about 60% of this firm's revenue. His smirk faded. I've also been in touch with the Colorado Bar Association about the ethical implications of a senior partner using his position to harass an employee over personal matters. Turns out they take that pretty seriously. Henry's face went pale. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you that your behavior has consequences, just like Clara's choices have consequences. I stood up to leave, then paused at his door. Oh, and Henri, Mark Lefevre specifically asked me to let you know that if my working conditions here don't improve immediately, Lefevre Development will be taking their projects elsewhere. Something about preferring to work with firms that maintain professional standards. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized in a Denver courtroom that felt too small for the magnitude of what was ending. Clara sat at the opposite table with her lawyer, looking pale and defeated. The confident woman who'd once smirked at my accusations was gone, replaced by someone who understood that actions have consequences. The settlement terms were better than I'd hoped for. I kept the house, the majority of our savings, and primary custody of all 3 girls. Clara would have them every other weekend and Wednesday evenings, standard visitation that reflected her new status. As the parent who'd chosen her affair over her family, Mr. Moreau, the judge said, the court finds that Mrs. Moreau's financial misconduct and documented infidelity substantially contributed to the breakdown of this marriage. The division of assets reflects these findings. Clara's lawyer had tried to argue that she deserved alimony, claiming she'd sacrificed career advancement to support the family, but the evidence was overwhelming. The stolen money, the credit cards, the documented lies. It all painted a picture of someone who'd been planning her exit strategy while maintaining her financial security. After the hearing, Clara approached me in the courthouse hallway. We were alone except for our lawyers who hung back at a respectful distance. I want you to know, she said quietly, that I never meant for it to happen this way. How did you mean for it to happen? I asked. She didn't have an answer for that. The girls blame me for everything, she continued. Elise won't even speak to me. Anya barely tolerates our visits. And Sophie keeps asking when I'm coming home. That's the consequence of her choices, Clara. I didn't create this situation. I know. I lost myself somewhere along the way. I felt invisible in my own life. I looked at this woman I'd loved for nearly 2 decades, who'd given me 3 beautiful daughters, who'd once been my best friend and closest confidant. You weren't invisible, I said finally. You were just looking for attention in the wrong places. That evening, I sat in our backyard while the girls did homework inside. Elise had been accepted to Colorado State with a partial academic scholarship. Anya was excelling in her art classes and had started talking about design school. Sophie was still processing everything, but seemed more stable now that the uncertainty was over. My phone buzzed with a text from Isabel, my lawyer. Henri Dubois announced his retirement today. Word is the partners pressured him out after the Lefebvre account threatened to leave. I stared at the message for a long time. Henry's career, built over 30 years, ended because he'd chosen to involve himself in my marriage. Just like Clara's affair had cost her our family, Henry's interference had cost him his reputation. The girls joined me on the patio after finishing their homework, settling into the outdoor furniture we'd bought together when Elise was still in elementary school. "Dad," Elise said, "are you happy?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, now that everything's over, are you happy it's just us?" I looked around at my daughters. Elise preparing for college. Anya finding her artistic voice. Sophie slowly healing from the trauma of watching her parents' marriage implode. They were strong, resilient, and surrounded by the stability their mother had nearly destroyed. "Yeah," I said. "I'm happy it's just us." 2 years later, I was designing a new community center in downtown Denver when Elise called from her dorm room at Colorado State. "Dad, I have something to tell you about Mom." My stomach tightened. Clara and I maintained minimal contact now, only coordinating around the girls' schedules and school events. She'd moved to Colorado Springs with Victor, who divorced his own wife to be with her. Their relationship had the desperate intensity of people who'd blown up their lives to be together. "What about her?" I asked. "She called Anya crying yesterday. Apparently, Victor cheated on her with some woman from his real estate office." The irony was almost too perfect. "How's Anya handling that?" "Better than Mom is. Anya told her that maybe now she understands how you felt." I leaned back in my office chair, looking out at the Denver skyline I'd helped shape over 2 decades. Some of those buildings represented the work I'd done while married to Clara, when I thought we were building something permanent together. Others were projects I'd completed after the divorce, when I'd learned to build for myself and my daughters alone. "Elise, I need you to know something. What your mother did, the lying, the cheating, the way she handled the divorce, that's not who she was when I married her. People change, and sometimes they change in ways that hurt the people who love them. I know, Dad, but she made her choices." "Yes, she did. And now she has to live with them." That weekend, all 3 girls were home for Anya's 16th birthday. We grilled burgers in the backyard and talked about colleges, careers, and Anya's latest art project. Sophie, now 13 and wise beyond her years, asked if I ever missed being married. "I miss being married to the person I thought your mother was," I said honestly. "But I don't miss the lies or the uncertainty or wondering if the person I loved actually existed." "Do you think you'll get married again?" Anya asked. "Maybe someday, if I meet someone who values honesty and loyalty as much as I do." "Good," Elise said firmly. "You deserve someone who won't take you for granted." That night after the girls were asleep, I sat in my study reviewing architectural plans and thinking about foundations. In construction, everything depends on having a solid base. If the foundation is compromised, the entire structure becomes unstable. My marriage to Clara had been built on what I thought was solid ground. But her deceptions had created fractures that eventually brought the whole thing down. The divorce had been painful, like demolishing a building you'd invested years in creating. But now I had something better. A life built on truth, a relationship with my daughters based on trust and respect, and the knowledge that I was strong enough to start over when necessary. My phone buzzed with a goodnight text from Elise. "Thanks for being the parent who stayed strong for us. We love you." I smiled and turned off the lights. Tomorrow, I had a new project starting, a mixed-use development that would combine residential and commercial spaces, creating a community where people could live, work, and build something lasting. Just like I'd done with my own life after Clara's betrayal taught me that the most important foundation is the one you build within yourself.